Hi again. So it would appear that the community is really digging my last video, which is overanalyzing a Disney Channel original movie. And the fact of the matter is that I have a lot more where that came from. So, well, buckle in, besties. And also, hi, new people. Thank you so much for joining. It's really nice to meet you. And I hope you like this week's video, which is also overanalyzing a Disney Channel original movie. LOL. So obviously I've been thinking about my last video and just like refreshing my phone and watching number go up like a silly clown. But I have also recently been thinking a lot about AI because it's everywhere. And as I was musing over this over the weekend, I realized that Disney, in fact, released a weirdly prescient in some ways movie about, among other things, AI ethics 20 years ago, way back in 2004. So what I want to talk about today is AI ethics through the lens of Disney's Pixel Perfect, which is one of my favorite DComs. A little bit makes me wonder if perhaps this film was secretly set in 2024 because, well, some of the AI stuff is already here. I have a lot of opinions about AI personally. Maybe I'll save them for the end. Who knows, man? This is going to be loosey-goosey. I think what I'm going to end up doing is go through the plot and just dive into topics as they appear in the plot of the film. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, like head on over to Disney Plus and watch it, and then we can chit chat. So what, you may ask, is Pixel Perfect about? Well, it's What If Girl Band, but AI beep boop, which is true. But having reviewed the writers of the film, Neal Shusterman is an author and screenwriter, obviously, but he's written a ton of award-winning young adult sci-fi and fantasy. He's kind of all over genre fiction. As I was reading through Neal Shusterman's Wikipedia page, I was like, wow, I want to read some more of these books. He's got some really fascinating stuff going on. His pen, his mind. So I think he was a great pick for this project. And the co-writer is Alan Sachs, who also worked on Smart House, which is another slay DCOM, also rather timely for 2024, and artificial intelligence and all that good stuff, as well as The Other Me. Sachs also executive produced Camp Rock and Camp Rock 2, so he's also a very big brain. The director of Pixel Perfect is Mark A.Z. DePay, who has a background in visual effects, which are also on display in a big way in this movie. As I look at his filmography, I think that Pixel Perfect is the most iconic thing he's ever worked on. Unless you're a fan of Garfield straight-to-DVD movies, I would say that Pixel Perfect is probably where his career peaked, alongside Halloween Town High, also extremely important. I feel like these two definitely have a great understanding of what makes an age-appropriate approach to sci-fi and some fantasy elements for young people. I would also say that this film lives in 2004. I would say there's a lot of tech optimism. This is very much in the Frutiger Arrow aesthetic. Their conception of the internet and the possibilities of technology are really optimistic, really positive, bright, colorful, thinking about how can technology live in harmony with humans feels like a key energy to this film. We'll see how that idea continues to evolve throughout the film. Apparently it is the 50th DCOM ever, which is also rather exciting. To actually get into the synopsis of the film, we begin by meeting Roscoe, who is played by Ricky Ullman. And besties, let me tell you, when I was a kid, Ricky Ullman was peak performance. I had the biggest crush on him, and now as I was watching this movie as a grown-up, I'm like, he couldn't be tinier. He's the tiniest lad, but turning in a really good performance, really sweet. He is computer boy. He is glasses. In the opening scene, he is like beeping and booping, typing on his computer, creating this holographic cat, which is very cute. And he can like change its patterns and change its colors at will in a Photoshop looking user interface. And what I think about the cat, and to some extent Loretta later, the thing about AI today is that you actually don't really need very many skills at all to create an AI image. So he is coding and he's read as this prodigy, but in 2024 you do not need to be a prodigy by any means to create little creatures with AI. Although the little AI creatures do appear to be sentient, have some free will, which we will get into later, and I don't think we're quite there yet, nor may we necessarily ever be. But yeah, nowadays you can just type in orange cat and you will have it, which is very cool. But we meet Roscoe, our male lead. While he's doing this, he's talking to his friend Sam on his webcam, and it's very FaceTime culture. Sam, his best girly friend. I really like Leah Pipes as Sam in this movie. She's a cool girl who's in a rock band. When we meet her in her room, she's got like this huge Avril Lavigne poster because it's 2004. She's the front woman of this band, the Sidebar. She writes the song, she plays lead guitar, and she and her buddies have auditioned for this local music club. But even though they are slang and they sound really good, they are sadly not accepted to perform because even though they are great instrumentalists and singers, the booker at the club's classic British band manager sleaze character. He has a moment where he puts her on the spot, which is actually very rude, and is like, let's see you move. And Sam, tries to rock it, and he very quickly puts her out of her misery. It's not about sound. It's about image. There's another band that goes on that I don't know who they are, or if they were trying to launch them, cross promote or what, but they are dancing and the British guy is like, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They're singing the song called Don't Even Try It, which is a consent anthem because Disney said, hey, let's fit as many important messages in the film as we can. If we're talking about AI ethics, consent is an important part of the conversation. I love that for them. This soundtrack is pretty freaking fantastic. I can listen to all the songs and they all slap and are really thematic, actually quite integrated with the entire theme of the piece. This is a golden age of Disney Channel original movie soundtracks. And I might just be saying that because basically the only music I listened to in 2004 was Disney Channel original movie soundtracks. But to me, they slapped. So there you go. Sam gets back from this audition. She's feeling very disheartened, talking about how they can't be everything people want them to be, her and the band. She's confiding in Roscoe and he's trying to make her feel better, but you get the sense that he's a little uncomfy with having to comfort her. And then there's a scene where Roscoe is trying to talk to his dad at dinner and he thinks his dad is asking him about Sam and he's confiding in him, but it turns out that he's on his Bluetooth headset. He's not paying attention because he's a workaholic dad. The dad created the hologram technology that will eventually play a major role in the piece. And yeah, part of what he says, he's like, I like Sam a lot, but she's so moody. Like, how do you see past all of these bumps? Sam has a crush on Roscoe and he maybe kind of sort of aware of it and like started to have feelings for her. But this idea of like, but she's so moody. She isn't perfect. I don't know if I can see a relationship with her because she's not perfect. If only there were a way to create a perfect person. Okay, so the band decides that they are going to hold auditions to bring in a new lead singer. And we have a wonderful bad audition montage in order to get through that. I love a bad audition montage. There's just something about them. See High School Musical. I'm an actor. I like to watch people do auditions. I'm a simple woman. So Roscoe decides to help out. And the way that he does this is by using his father's hologram technology to create a perfect pop star. He pulls elements of different people's voices. He pulls elements of different people's appearances, kind of like AI does for realsies. And he composites them into a perfect pop star named Loretta Martin. Again, I would say that creating a visual like Loretta that's a combination of a lot of different beautiful celebs is very doable these days. Again, you can just say, please make me a beautiful pop star and adjust it accordingly with text, which is pretty wild. You don't need to be a tech genius to accomplish this. Similarly, you can do AI voice stuff, pulling from different celebrities without too much trouble, as we see by the SpongeBob AI covers, which are admittedly very funny. But my thoughts about this, which the film also kind of gets into a little bit later, is that if you're using somebody's voice, you should probably pay them. They should probably get paid for that in some way, especially if they're a singer whose whole purpose, whose whole way of making money and living in this world is by using their voice, then surely that person should get something when their voice is used, especially if it's for a commercial project that makes somebody money, right? Similarly, I think that things get pretty muddy at a certain point if you begin to use people's visual likeness without their permission either. We've heard lots of stories about people doing some not nice things with AI, using real people's physical appearances. And so this is something to think much about. And I urge caution from all. And again, just something that should like probably be regulated in some way, whether that's through licensing someone's appearance, licensing their voice, or allowing people to opt out, right? I think that's the case with all things AI. Is just like, oh wait, you used all of this information to train it and you didn't ask anyone's permission, is kind of a wild thing that it's being allowed to happen. But technology will always advance faster than our ability to regulate it. This is something I have learned from my buddies from school who took tech and law and ethics courses and who I like to chat with about these things. But yes, so I would say like creating a visual and audio AI is not that hard in 2024, which is wild. I think the hologram technology in this film is pretty fictional. They kind of hand wave it and they're like, yeah, the computer uses echolocation to generate an image that is stable. And it's like, okay, sure. I don't think we're quite there in 2024. It seems like you need a lot of actual infrastructure pieces of technology to generate a hologram for your Hatsune's Miku. We definitely have holographic pop stars. They just sadly cannot go everywhere and are not yet fully AI powered. There's like the hologram pop stars that have like set things that they do or are based on real people. And then there are also AI pop stars like the K-pop group Mave, right? They live in the computer or possibly in the metaverse, but they have actual people who do the singing and actual choreographers who do the dancing. Yeah, that is something else in this film. Loretta auditions and she sings the girl's song, Nothing's Wrong With Me. And she does a little dance. And I'm like, where did this dance come from? Like, did Roscoe make this dance? Or is the idea that Loretta is like generating this dance? Like, does she have choreography skills or does he have choreography skills? Is he doing like Dance Revolution on his little tiny handheld computer that he has to carry so he can like monitor the hologram? It's fun. I love it. Oh yeah, the song Nothing's Wrong With Me, thematic, iconic. The lyrics are, you may find it just a little strange. I like dancing barefoot in the pouring rain. We will come back to that. When the human girls sing it, it's about self-acceptance. Yeah, it might be a little bit difficult, but there's nothing wrong with me. I accept my imperfections. And then when Loretta sings it, it's kind of fascinating because for Loretta, nothing's wrong with me means I'm literally perfect. Fascinating. It's working on so many levels. What a slay film. So the gals are like, we love Loretta. She absolutely ate this audition and we're going to have her join the band. And so Roscoe manages to get them a gig at a school dance. And at first everybody's like, who are these girls anyway? But then when they get up there and once Loretta gets up there and starts doing literal backflips, like many literal backflips while also singing, people are like, this rules. It kind of made me think of Julie and the Phantoms, which is just another hologram band, another Kenny Ortega joint relevant to my interests that I might talk about one of these days. I just have to come up with a like take other than please give me more Julie and the Phantoms. I loved it so much. So Roscoe's pumped and he's like, this is working so great. Loretta, I'm going to keep working on you until you're perfect. And of course, in the process, he starts to fall in love with her a little bit. At a certain point, she has some curiosity about the outside world. She tries to go outside, but holograms cannot exist outside. I don't know if they can exist outside in real life. So it looks like holograms can exist outdoors, but you still need hardware to generate them. You can't just have them like wandering freely in a little soda can shaped hologram container. And yeah, at some point, Roscoe is talking to her and he's asking her what she thinks about something. And she goes, well, what do you want me to think? Which is very beep boop. But she becomes more and more human seeming over the course of the film, which is rather exciting and interesting. So Roscoe's little buddy from school, this guy's mom runs the tech company that Roscoe's dad works for. And he's like, oh my God, you gotta give me a date with Loretta. She's the hottest girl ever. Basically threatens to get Roscoe's dad fired if Roscoe won't get him a date with Loretta. Wild. And so Roscoe agrees, but he has to be there with his little computer so that Loretta can exist in the space. And so he like goes up to Sam and is like, hey, do you want to go on a double date? She thinks that she's actually getting asked out, but no, she's not, because it's actually for Loretta, which is so annoying. And she goes on the date and is pissed the whole time. There are visual gags about trying to go on a date with a hologram. It's cute, it's silly. And then at some point, Roscoe has some conflict with his dad. He doesn't want his dad to know about Loretta. Loretta. So he gives the little hologram container thing to Sam to take home. While Sam is hanging out with Loretta comes another key question. Sam is doing her homework and Loretta is telling her the answers, and Sam is like, you can't just tell me the answers. I need to work on it and do it myself so I can get it right. Just like, but you got it wrong. She's a hater. She's lacking in social graces. And Sam says, you know everything, but you don't understand it. You know what a baby is, but you've never been one. Part of what's being human is trying and failing until you get better. Slay on, philosophical queen Sam. I think Sam is right about this process. And if we zoom out and think about this as a reading of like using AI in school, I think, sure, yes, you should know how to use AI if it's going to stick around. But I also think that you must know, a person must know how to exist without it. You still want to be able to write an email. I'm a little bit biased and or closer to the problem because I work in education, but my biggest concern about AI in the classroom and just free access to AI anywhere is, are people actually learning anything if you're simply punching in your prompts for school essays or dropping your math problems into AI? First of all, the current version of ChatGPT is often wrong. It doesn't do math. It's not good at math. And it's also not good at writing. If it's a research paper, it literally just makes things up. The way that it works is that it predicts what words are most likely to appear in sequence, but there's not any actual like knowledge behind it. It scraped the internet, not really for information, but for what words are likely to go together when we're discussing a certain topic. But that's not actual knowledge. So I certainly hope if you are an AI user for your schoolwork that you are checking its work and consider whether you want to be totally up a creek if it ever goes away, right? I hear people using it to write emails and I'm like, besties, I promise you can write an email. You can. You really can. I believe in you and I want you to be able to do things by yourself if you need to. Throughout this, Roscoe talks about Loretta like she's a real person. And I would say Loretta does gain sentience and gain a sense of free will over the course of the film. But it reminded me a little bit of character AI and how people create these bots with certain qualities to say what they want them to say. But there's also this like big disclaimer on the website, like these bots are not real. Even if you name it after a real person, don't believe that this is a real person. The idea that people can, especially really young people, can get sucked into believing that what's ultimately words on a screen has something to say to them or can have a relationship with them is a little bit spooky. Maybe this is too philosophical. I was like, this is going to be short, and no, it's not. But like thinking back to caveman times, right? Technology has evolved so fast, and I'm not convinced that our little lizardy brains could ever have evolved in such a way to catch up with it. And so it's understandable that something that really, really approximates human speech or text feels real, but I think it's important to remember that it is not, and that Loretta is not yet a real person in real life. Yeah. The Lorettas of the world are not yet real IRL. So at a certain point, Sam goes over to Roscoe's house to talk to him, and she sees a pile of CDs and some magazine clippings, which LOL, they didn't realize that you wouldn't even need to have like physical versions of the things that you're trying to copy or synthesize into your AI entity, right? But she finds these things, and she finds all of Roscoe's notes that are like 8% of this actor and 9% of this person's voice. And she sees even pictures of herself and things that he has considered and crossed out about using her for Loretta, which is so upsetting to her. And I think rightfully so. A good example of how violating it is to have a part of yourself used without your consent, right? Which right now is how AI works, whether you like it or not. It's using people's images, it's using people's voices, it's using people's writing. Anyone who's ever written anything on the entire internet is functionally going through what Sam is going through in this moment, where you're wondering which part of me was used to make this, and why didn't you tell me, and why didn't I have the opportunity to say, no, I don't want you to use this. In the story, Sam literally says, which part of me did you think was good enough to keep? Which is a slightly different question, but I think still relevant as we think about, okay, if we decide to fairly attribute things and say, yes, I asked AI to write me an article in the style of this journalist, how do you decide what is a fair way to credit or compensate that journalist? How do you decide what in the style of means in this context? I don't know. AI ethics, so many questions. But yeah, ultimately I think that using other people's likenesses is a flop thing to do without asking them and compensating them. So Sam is having a lot of feelings and she turns those feelings into a banger. And the name of the banger is Notice Me, about her secret crush on Roscoe. And Roscoe doesn't get it because he's clueless. Feels very like proto Taylor Swift. It's giving You Belong With Me. Loretta wears short skirts, Sam wears t-shirts. You get it. The songs in this film are absolutely giving. She sings her moody guitar version of it, and then it transitions to Loretta singing it on stage. Doing a great job, by the way, but she hasn't felt that, you know? You see Sam simmering in resentment in the background. At this performance, something big happens. There's a satellite outside and the satellite breaks, and that causes Loretta's image to flicker. And at first people are freaking out, but then they realize that she's a hologram and they're like, actually this rules. And then there's this little news montage where the news people are talking about the things that we're discussing now. We get interviews with Loretta, and we also have Roscoe appearing on a talk show. It's very funny. It's like just a big desk with the word talk on the front of it. And one guy being like, it's unnatural. And someone else being like, it's harmless. It's very funny, but also accurate. These are conversations that we are and should continue to have. It's just funny to see the 2004 version of it go up. It's interesting that they have decided, or just interesting that this film settled on holograms as like the futuristic thing. And I mean, we still haven't gotten there yet, so who knows, you know? Like the Apple Vision is not really catching on, although I wonder if that'll just be kind of like Google Glass, one of those curiosities that only a couple people ever really has. Maybe we will exist in the pixel perfect world yet. The group is gaining in popularity. They get signed by a record label. We see a scene of the girls recording their album and it's all very exciting, but then the record exec is super harsh on the human girls and Loretta's like, do you have any notes for me? And he's like, no, you're perfect. So it's definitely creating tension, and Loretta has this moment where she's like, you can't fire the girls, they're my band. And it's in some ways nice of her to do, but also kind of condescending. And yeah, the interpersonal dynamics are all very complicated. Now that everybody has been on TV, Roscoe is no longer trying to hide Loretta from his dad. His dad is like, wow, son, you're brilliant. Let's push this even further. You've made Loretta, but what's next? And Roscoe says, oh my God, Dad, why can't you appreciate what's right in front of you? Cinematic parallels, because wow, who's right in front of Roscoe? A bar. And he's like, don't you want to see what Loretta can become? And the dad's like, she can't become anything. She's a hologram, which is also true. It's sort of interesting how, at least in real life, his dad would be right. But in this fantasy world, Loretta is gaining sentience. She's having goals. She's having wants. And so she does need to be treated as such. And everybody needs to appreciate what's right in front of them. Not just Roscoe's dad. It's interesting to see how a character can really, really get it in certain ways and really, really not get it in other ways, which is kind of a fun and interesting energy to have in a movie for children, right? So Loretta is feeling inspired and she wants to write her own song. And she does it by pulling together lyrics from other people's songs. She shows it to Roscoe and she's so proud. And he's like, but you didn't write this. This is just a bunch of pieces of other people's songs. And she's like, well, that's what you did when you made me. She doesn't understand the difference, which I think is a fair point. So Loretta starts to get frustrated after learning that her song doesn't count as a real song. And Roscoe's like, I'll just download some new creativity scripts for you. And she's like, no, you keep trying to change me and make me perfect. And he's like, even perfection has limitations. And she's like, but you said I was perfect. And so she's having perhaps a little identity crisis and decides to escape into the internet, even though, you know, the internet is big and scary and lawless, and who knows what will happen to a tiny little hologram in the great big scary internet. But she's mad and she wants to go. So she goes to the internet. The design of the internet is so fun and weird and Frutiger arrow. It's like this big white space with all these translucent icons flying all over. And she gets picked up by a search engine, which looks like a literal engine. And some trucker type guy is driving it and almost runs her over, but she manages to get in and asks him to take her anywhere but here. Eventually she finds an email server and jumps in, tries to ask for directions, gets tagged as a virus and gets chased by some incredibly pixelated German shepherds. And eventually she finds an actual, I don't even know what it is, an information desk, and is able to email herself to Sam. The email sequence is very fun, very weird. The visual display is in full force. It's super fun and interesting to imagine, even though nowadays we know that the internet is a series of tubes. This is before the cloud, so things existed in one place and needed to be emailed or brought on your flash drive or in your hologram can to the next place. So yeah, I wonder what they would do for a sequence like this in 2024. Who knows? So Roscoe realizes what Loretta's done and he goes over to Sam's place to vent and ask for help. And Sam is like, I have her, but dude, why don't you realize what's right in front of you? I have liked you this whole time and all you can think about is Loretta. And they kiss and it's like the most 15-year-old kiss you've ever seen in your life. And Roscoe is just kind of nonplussed. Like, glad that Loretta's safe, but he's also like, whoa, Sam is being girl so confusing. It's so confusing sometimes to be a girl. Roscoe lives alone with his dad in a big concrete looking house because they are tech boys. And you don't totally know what happened to Roscoe's mom, but it sounds like they're divorced or that she left his dad. Roscoe talks to his dad about how his dad eats alone a lot. And his dad thinks about it and is like, yeah, you know, I guess since your mom, I've kind of been looking for something that I never quite found. And he says, perfection's a funny thing. The more you try to find that perfection in people, the more meals you eat alone. A bar, you know? He's kind of a poet. It's a little tragic. Meanwhile, Loretta is, again, gaining sentience. You see her watching this old movie and she asks Roscoe, what is it like to feel? And he tries to explain it to her with some beautiful metaphors about music. And he like walks up to her, tries to touch her face, and you think like, it's gonna work, and it doesn't. Because ultimately she is not real and it's kind of sad, it's kind of tragic, you know? You see the like sparkly special effect where he's trying to touch her face and she goes, I can't feel anything. And he goes, me neither. Drama. Then comes the big meeting. Roscoe attends this meeting with Harsh Tone Records. I wonder if Harsh Tone Records are good guys or bad guys. They're so impressed with Loretta that Roscoe and his dad are brought into the business side of things. And then we find out that Harsh Tone is going to partner with Skygraph, the tech company that Roscoe's dad works for. The record company is super excited and they're like, oh my gosh, we can make these holograms. We can make them any ethnicity. They don't need to eat. They don't need to sleep. And the second they're done performing, you can put them back in their little can. They literally say, we're going to exploit them. And they're so pumped about it. And I completely can see how a money person who is not a creative would be excited about the ability to eliminate all imperfections from a performer. There's no chance for interpersonal drama if they are not a person and can never go to a party and make a mistake. You never have to feed them and you never have to pay them. Like, why wouldn't you, if you are a spooky corporate goon, why wouldn't you want to have that? So I think that this movie was right on track in terms of its characterization of the executive. Even though this person is presumably in a creative field, they are more concerned with their bottom line, right? So yeah, we get to see a scene in this movie for children from 20 years ago that I think really, really accurately speaks to a lot of the issues around music and technology today in 2024. So then the record execs are so excited about their ability to exploit, and Roscoe gets upset and stands up for Loretta. So does his dad. The dad says, just because we can doesn't mean that we should. So the dad finally gets it. Right? They storm out. And then Daryl, who's the exec that they'd been working with, who's been producing the album, seemingly sides with the company, but Roscoe kind of throws it in his face. This guy used to be an artist and decided to go corporate. And Roscoe's like, didn't you say that you thought all artists should have a choice? Yes. He did. And so Roscoe and his dad leave. The record exec like begrudgingly calls for a hologram ethics task force. Again, note that they call for the AI task force after the ink is already dry. They've already decided what they're going to do. They're doing the task force after the fact to cover up their butts. And again, it just seems like, you know, in technology land, in corporate land, people want to do things and pounce on them and make sure that they're not getting left behind before they really think about the greater implications or ethics of adopting a new technology. They walk out at threat to Roscoe's dad's job, but he feels some more connection to his father after this moment. He's surprised that his dad actually stood up for him and is on the same page as him. The record producer Daryl sneaks in and brings Loretta out of her little container and says, okay, you have a choice right now. That's funny. He's a bald man and he's offering her a choice. It's kind of giving The Matrix cinematic parallels. And he's like, Loretta, you have a choice. Either you can stay here and perform and that's all you'll ever be able to do, or, and he holds up his little BlackBerry or whatever, and they're like, the wireless web. 2004, what a year. Basically, he's offering her her freedom, reflecting on this idea that every performer has a choice. And she decides that she's gonna escape into the internet once again. And then you see a scene of Daryl quitting the big scary record label and driving off. So it's all cool and Loretta's off, she's in the internet, she's thriving, she's slaying. But they have this really, really big gig and we don't know where Loretta is. She hasn't reappeared. We know Daryl set her free, which is great, but she's not on time for the concert. So Sam decides to go on for her. Sam's mom plays Sam's part in the guitar section and Sam puts on a blonde wig and wears a little Loretta outfit and does her level best to dance it out Loretta style. And it's going okay until she attempts a big flip and she ends up falling and hitting her head. And she's taken to the hospital. She's in a coma. And finally, Loretta emails herself back to Roscoe and is brought into life in the hospital. And she's like, hey guys, I was just hanging out in the internet. What's up? And she sees Sam in the hospital bed and she's like, what's wrong with her? And Sam's got these like EEG cables attached to her little head. And Loretta is like, we have to fix her. And so even though Roscoe says, if you go in, you can't come out, she goes into the EEG machine and basically enters Sam's brain. So now we are in full sci-fi fantasy mode. She enters Sam's brain and it's like a spooky little desert. And Sam is sitting on the ground with a broken guitar. And Loretta repairs the guitar with tech magic, and then hands it to Sam and helps her play it. And as she plays it, it turns into this beautiful Frutiger Arrow fantasy. It's like butterflies and trees, and it's all kind of glowy and sparkly. And they kind of hash it out inside of her mind. Sam realizes that she was so jealous of Loretta, but ultimately Loretta did come through for her and helped her. And Loretta's like, you created this beautiful world. The line, again, bars on bars in this film. She says, you get to be the dreamer. All I'll ever be is the dream. And Sam is like, wow, I never thought about it like that. So true, bestie. And they've kind of reconciled, but then they both start to sort of phase out and they realize there's only room for one of us in here being Sam's mind. And then we cut back to real life and Sam wakes up, but it doesn't sound like her. It sounds like Loretta. And Loretta's like, it's my turn now. Kind of spooky, isn't it? And she gets up and she's touching everybody and feeling the world. And everybody's like, what's going on? It's raining outside and she has always wanted to go out in the rain. That has been her fascination throughout the whole film. So they have this moment on like the threshold in the rain and she goes, why do we even want her back anyway? She's not like me. She's not perfect. And he goes, she doesn't have to be. And Loretta goes, so you're saying you love her because of her imperfections? And he goes, yes, because of everything she is and because of everything she's not. A bar, true romance. Who is doing it like them? And then Loretta's like, okay, I get it. Of course you can come back. What kind of hologram do you think I am? And then she goes out and she dances in the rain. She's spinning around barefoot in her hospital gown in Sam's body. And then it kind of cuts between visions of Sam and visions of Loretta, cinema, art. And then finally this big lightning bolt comes down and you see a Loretta-shaped phantasm escaping from Sam's body as Sam collapses. Once Loretta's phantasm goes off, Sam revives. There's a big glowy cloud in the sky, but that's all we really know, you know? Maybe Loretta's gone forever. Sad. But then they have this concert at the very, very end, and Sam sings a beautiful ballad about rain, and it turns out that she was a soft girl at heart this whole time. The song's all about how the rain is like teardrops and how she finally understands and that she misses Loretta and she's learned something from their complicated relationship. And at the end of the concert, they're heading out and Sam is critiquing her performance, and then Roscoe's like, "You sounded great just the way you are." He finally gets it. She's like, "Thanks for singing those new harmonies, by the way." And both of the other band members are like, "Oh, I wasn't singing any harmonies." And they look around, and I think Roscoe's the only one who sees, but there's this cloud of stage fog, and then he looks into it and he sees a faint image of Loretta, and he goes, "I think the Zeta Bites might have a guardian angel." It's so cute. And then it ends and you can tell that they're gonna live happily ever after, you know? This movie is so cute, and I think there's a lot of good stuff in it. It is very thought-provoking. I also wanted to come in with a quick little sidebar from the editing bay because the ADHD is ADHDing, but I wanted to quickly talk a little bit about the AI artist idea. The way that the people in this film get pumped about an AI artist is sort of fascinating because to me, again, as an artist myself, part of the joy of experience a piece of art, whether it's music, acting, dance, even sports feats, the thing about it that's so exciting is that a person is doing it. If I'm reading a book, feeling connected to another person's experience and how another person is seeing the world, and that person has honed their craft over years and years. The value is not just about seeing an excellent performance, it's also about understanding all of the work and skill that goes into being able to execute a performance. Hours and hours of practice and years of lessons and technique and coaching and everything else that goes into it. We've got the Olympics right now, and even if someone was able to, for example, create a robot that could jump higher or swim faster or do more gymnastics flips than any of the people we watch, I would be more impressed by the scientist that made the robot, because ultimately it's so much more interesting to see what human people do with technology or otherwise than it is to just see code execute itself. Part of the joy and the challenge of being a person is understanding how to make your limited human instrument perform to the best of your ability. And I think that these hypothetical people who are trying to figure out ways to cut artists out of the equation don't realize that for me, and I hope for many other people, the joy of these pursuits is that in some way, in theory, if I had tons and tons of training and all the best resources, whatever, in some way that I am capable of doing these things. The humanity is the value in these things. And I hope that as technology continues to advance, we do not lose sight of it. I'm reading this book called Choke Point Capitalism that talks about how artists are sort of the canary in the coal mine for larger labor issues. And I think we're already starting to see how these technological advances are impacting the arts and also other fields. Thinking about the strikes last year and these attempts to use AI to replace people rather than just using it as a tool, with the ways of corporate money grabbing, generally not wanting to pay people. I wanted to include that in this video. Another thought that I am borrowing from a computer science master's degree in machine learning buddy is the idea that maybe sentience is something that could happen eventually. The thing of it is that because computers only know what they have been coded to know and only do what they have been coded to do in the state of the world now, there's no real way to know that a computer is having an independent thought. You know what goes in, you know what comes out, but there's no way of knowing whether the thing between the input and the output is actual thought or just knowing how to process the information that comes in. I am not a doctor, so this may be above my pay grade, but I find that to be a pretty convincing argument, even though the human brain is also quite mysterious, isn't she? She is like a computer too. I don't know. If computers ever do gain sentience for real, I will be nice to them. I still tell Siri thank you all the time. Hopefully they won't be mad at me for having this conversation and saying that there's really no way of knowing, even though I do believe that other people are definitely real. So yeah, ultimately I think that we human beings gotta stick together and not
hasten our inability to continue to make our life. And also, AI is so bad for the environment. It's so bad for labor. It's bad for education. Like, let's do less. Maybe. I think that's it. Art is real. Support artists. Yeah. I also want to say a little something about the AI girlfriend of it all. Initially, I was going to be like, this is about gender, but I reviewed this video by Aini, who's another creator on here who I think is so smart and cool. And in her video, she's talking about how AI is being used to combat loneliness in China. And the people using it are people of all genders. So I think that we do, however, really need to continue to remind ourselves what is and is not real. And I don't know, while these technologies can, again, really approximate a lot of aspects of communicating with another person, we have to remember that they're not real and try to remember to seek out connection with other people for real. The thought that I had as I was rewatching her video was that, of course, it would be cool and easy to have a relationship with someone who is completely perfect and completely tailored to exactly who you are. People are frustrating, but then I think that you as a person no longer have any reason to grow or become more understanding or to address, potentially real problems that you have or changes that you should make in order to become a better partner. I don't like the idea of using technology as a way to escape your own responsibility to better yourself, And the ability to grow and learn and change and better yourself is a gift. And so I hope that as technology maybe becomes better and better at approximating human connection, and I don't know, if they start making boyfriend robots, girlfriend robots, friend of any gender robots, I hope that we remember that real human connection is valuable, that reducing all friction is not necessarily the answer to all of your ills, and that the challenges presented by trying to get along with other people are worthwhile and worth pursuing and trying to overcome and reach understanding. We can learn to love each other and ourselves for everything we are and also everything we're not. Like this movie, guys! I'm just over the moon. I think it's so cool and smart and weirdly prescient. Yes, it's a movie for babies, but I actually think that Pixel Perfect is a good movie to introduce to young people. We adults can use it as a reminder too, as we begin to incorporate AI into our daily lives, just to be a little bit more intentional about using AI and enjoy that it's cute and fun and has many, many bops and many, many bangers. So I am very grateful to the House of Mouse for creating such a fun and interesting film that is so thought-provoking, even today, even to me, a grown-up lady. I think those are all of my thoughts about the movie. So what do you think? What did I miss? I live to overanalyze these movies, so I'm excited to hear what y'all think. If you haven't watched this movie, what are you waiting for? Get over there. And yeah, if you thought this was interesting, maybe leave me a little like. If you have other thoughts, leave me a little comment. Subscribe, because I can talk about Disney Channel original movies all day. And I probably kind of will, although next week I have something else in mind. So get ready. I talk about all sorts of stuff on here, but now that I know y'all like Disney Channel original movies, I can certainly yap about those. Thanks for watching. Have a good week. Don't forget to go outside and feel the rain on your skin. No one else can feel it for you, besties. And don't forget about your real life friends and family and your AI ethics. Bye.